what is the nature of ego and how to go beyond it. There is a verse in Ulladu Narpadu, 40 verses on reality, Saddarshanam, which explains the nature of ego. உருப்பற்றி உண்டாம், உருப்பற்றி நிற்கும், உருப்பற்றி உண்டு மிக ஓங்கும், உருவிட்டு உருப்பற்றும், தேடினால் ஓட்டம் பிடிக்கும், உருவற்ற பேய் அகந்தை. So let me explain this particular stanza. உருப்பற்றி உண்டாம், the ego rises by holding on to a form. உருப்பற்றி நிற்கும், it able to sustain itself by holding on to a form. A form here means dehatma buddhi, like we associate ourselves with the body and mind, that I am so and so and I am in this world, and then like we have our mind with all the thoughts, emotions and feelings, everything happens. This is called a form. Anything beyond Atman or the self-awareness, aham, I am, is a form. So uruvittu urupatrum, the ego will leave one form but again to hold on to some other form. This is what happens after our lifetimes. When a person dies, then it will seem as if we are losing a physical body, but again ego will be able to hold on to some other body so that it can continue its ways of things. So உருப்பற்றி உண்டாம், உருப்பற்றி நிற்கும், உருப்பற்றி உண்டு மிக ஓங்கும். The ego will be able to sustain itself and gain strength by holding on to the form as much possible. So the ego is actually able to feed on our feeling of Dehatma Buddhi, and hence the Dehatma Buddhi is the very nature of the ego. But when a person looks for the source of this ego, source of this I thought or the thoughts, then one's attention shifts towards the inner self-awareness, and once the attention is focused on the self-awareness, then naturally ego subsides. That's what is being explained here. This is the practice of Mahayoga, whereby we directly deal with this ego so that the ego or the mind subsides into our own natural self-awareness. And as such, this ego does not have any form. Uruvatra pei agandai. Agandai means ego. The ego, the mind, I thought, everything refers to the same, Dehatma Buddhi. So this ego doesn't have any form, but it's able to sustain itself by holding on to forms. So all this happens because of our vasanas, the inclinations. So the way to eradicate all these inclinations is by holding on to our own existence consciousness, the self-awareness, Atman. The cycle of birth and deaths are happening due to the vasanas. So once we eradicate the vasana, then naturally we attain liberation, freedom from this bondage. So once Bhagavan, when he happens to read a wrong biography of himself, he didn't say anything about the wrongly written events about his life, but he just made some minor like spelling corrections. And then when some other devotee came to Bhagavan and asked him, Bhagavan, this is a wrong history of yours, why didn't you say so? Then Bhagavan replies, do you mean to say all these things are truth and only this biography is false? By pointing to the external world, by keeping his finger on all these things of the world, Bhagavan asks, do you mean to say whether all this world is true and only this biography is false? So what Bhagavan is trying to point out is the fact that the ego itself is the original false nature. So whatever then we do with our ego naturally is from that false source. So everything will be seen in a wrong way. So the way to rectify our error is to go beyond the ego. When one goes beyond the ego, then naturally one's vision will be all right. The way in which we see a thing in the right way. For example, if I mistake a rope to be a snake, then I will be afraid of that snake all the time to go near it. So a lot of unwanted things will be going on in my mind. But why this is happening is because of me not seeing the object in the right way. If we see it in the right way, we will be able to understand it's only a rope and it is not a snake. That way it will remove our fears. In the same way, it is because of the wrong perception we have let the ego to rise up. It is because of the non-inquiry, lack of inquiry, this ego has risen up. Now only with the right perception, which is basically to focus on one's own self-awareness, the ego will actually go away, subside. This is the way to go beyond ego. This is what Bhagavan is teaching when he says that the seer alone is real. The seer here means the self-awareness, not the ego. As we actually are in the apparent sense. Apparently we are all ego. But our essential nature of the ego itself is awareness. Ego is a mixture of awareness plus wrong perception. Dehatma buddhi. So every moment of time when we remain without thoughts, then in those moments of time we remain as awareness. Even though we may be having body consciousness. It is not necessary that one should lose physical body consciousness to be aware. No. We can have our physical body consciousness, yet when we remain without thoughts, being quiet in the mind, we naturally remain as self-awareness, whereby the mind or the ego would subside in the awareness. So this is what Bhagavan is trying to point out when he says that the world is unreal, because the world is perceived by the ego, which itself is unreal. So the something which is unreal cannot really perceive real as it is. Even something is reality, even the reality will be seen in unreal way for something which itself is unreal. Ego itself is unreal. So then what happens is that the moment ego rises, it will hide our true nature, and at the same time it will create a image in our mind as if the entire world as such is real. World as Atman is always real, but the world as something apart from the Atman is unreal. This is what the nature of the ego, to hide our truth and to make us believe that the world as it is real. So when we remain without thoughts, being in self-awareness, naturally we go beyond ego in those moments of time, and in those moments of time we remain in the presence of Bhagavan, and we have the right perception of the world also, which is basically the experiential understanding that all is one. We will not see anything apart from our self-awareness. We may be perceiving worldly objects, we may be walking on the road, we may be in a shopping mall, yet in those moments of time wherein we remain without thoughts, we remain only as the Atman, then there won't be any kind of otherness in our interaction in the world. Even though the normal worldly level, we may be engaging in normal worldly activities too. This is the truth. So let us understand the fact that the ego is the very source of all illusions, and to remain beyond the nature of the ego by holding on to our own self-awareness, by being in the presence of Bhagavan, is the effective way, only way and effective way to go beyond ego and to remain in that state of self-awareness all the time. Then, as Bhagavan says, we will see the world as something which is very much of the part of self-awareness. We won't see it as something apart from ourselves, which basically means even while engaging in the world, our essential nature will be rooted in self-awareness. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala.